So guys, this is the Odoo Docker production setup that I wish I had years ago. And to save you a time, I've prepared the whole set of code for you here in this repo where you could just clone it. I've shared the link down below. And what we're going to do in the video, we're going to go through the whole setup one by one, understand what we're trying to do in terms of performance, security, backups, and logging. To make it even more easier for you, I'm going to let you in on my deployment process by starting with cloning the setup that I just showed you all the way to deploying the setup into your client's production server. Let's go. Now, so the first step what we're going to do is we're going to clone the production setup into our local environment. So I've created a folder locally that's called company A. In your case, you could just name it after your client's company. And then we're going to do, we're going to go to the terminal, new terminal. And then inside the company A folder, what we're going to do is we're going to say git clone, go into the setup that I just made, copy the repo link, come back here, say paste. And then after that, we're going to add dot, because if you don't add the latest dot, what it's going to do is it's going to create another folder inside the company A. So to prevent that, we're going to add that dot at the end. And then now it's going to start cloning. As you can see on the left, it cloned all the files from our setup. Note, before I go ahead and start explaining the setup and the file structure, I'm assuming that you know everything about Docker and Docker Compose. If you don't, I've shared a quick and easy to follow video in the video description down below that explains Docker and Docker Compose, and it won't take you that much time to go through it. Now, looking at our folder structure, you can see we have two Docker Compose files, one for the local development one and one for the live one. We're going to see the difference in a bit. And we also have a config folder that has two odoo.conf files, one for the local development one and one for the live one. These are just .example one. So we're going to see how to set up the real ones. And we also have the .env file, which also is a example. And inside we have Postgres user, in our case it's Odoo, and then we have the password, and of course Postgres DP. This is just an example. Now let's look at the main Docker Compose file. And in here, as you can see, we have a network that's called Odoo. And then inside, we have services, and we have three containers. Now, the first container is the DB container, which is the Postgres container. And then the second one is the web container, which is the Odoo container. And the third one is the Apache. So this is the Docker Compose for the live production one. And we have another Docker Compose for the dev one. As you can see here, it's not that much of a code because it is using the network that we define inside the Docker Compose one. And inside of it, we are accessing the 8069 straight away by passing the Apache. So to understand this even more, let's look at this diagram in our repo. So in the production, what we're doing is the user sends in a request, and then the request first goes through the Apache, and then the Apache passes the request to the Odoo with the 8069 port, and then inside of Odoo, if it needs a database access, it sends the request to the Postgres SQL container. And that's how it works. Now, with the local development, we bypass the Apache, and then it goes straight to the Odoo, and then the Odoo container sends in the request to the Postgres SQL. So let's get back to the main Docker Compose file and explain each element one by one real quick. So this is already self-explanatory. This is the image, and we're using Postgres 15 as the DP. And the second one, this is important, and I've learned it the hard way. So you want the service to restart automatically if something happens to the server. And in here, we're telling this service to read that database's username and password from the .env file, which we will be creating soon. And this is also self-explanatory. This service will come under the Odoo network. Volumes is also self-explanatory. Now, let me explain this. This is important for security-wise, right? You don't want that 5.4 to be exposed to the internet. So what I'm trying to say is this port should only be accessed locally, right? And I've learned it the hard way after finding out one day that my DP was exposed to the internet like this. And I found out that there was almost 275,000 brute force attacks from bots on the internet because they found that 5432 support was open to the internet via my VPN. Now, moving on, here we have a health check. So we're doing a little bit of health check. So this will help Odoo to not start till the DP's health check passes. Now, after that, we also have logging. So if anything happens to these services, you want to have traceable logging. So we're logging everything into a .json file that will be appearing inside the Docker folder when you deploy it to the production. And finally, we have a max size. So I had to learn this the hard way. And what happens is sometimes if you don't limit the size of the logging, it might crash the whole server because you might run out of disk. So we're telling it the maximum size for the login is 10 megapixel. And then the maximum files is 5 files. Now, all of these ones are just repetition of what I've just explained. As you can see, this is years and years of experience ready for you to just deploy and run. So I'm doing the same with the web, the restart. And in here, one thing it's different from the DP is I'm telling it that it is dependent on the DP. And the one condition is the DP's health should be okay before starting the server or the Odoo server. It's also reading from the .m file, and it also have its own volumes. It's reading the config file from the config folder and the add-ons. Now, this is also important. It is exposing the 8069 to Apache, and it also has its own health check that will also be used by the Apaches, and it also have its own logging section. Apache is also the same. Now, as for backup, we have a script that does the backup for us that create a dump file from the Odoo container that we've just seen in the Docker Compose. We also have another script that creates a cron job and runs backup every day, and it's going to create a folder that's called backups, which will be containing .dump file for each day. So now that you've understood how we're handling security, how we're handling logging, let's set up the config files and also the .m files. And to do so, what we're going to do is we're going to run make and then setup. And as you can see here, we got .m file, and then here we have a Postgres password also that we generated. So this is kind of a duplicate. I've already fixed it. By the time you're watching this video, if you run make setup, you'll not get to see the duplicated password, but you can see how make setup works. And if we go to the config, you can also see that we have new odoo.conf file, and inside we have few field setup, and we also have another odoo.dev.conf. So now that we have everything set up, what you want to do is in the step, copy your add-ons and then paste them in your add-ons folder here. But in my case, I always have repo for my add-ons, and what I will usually do is I will change the directory to my add-ons and then git clone my add-ons repo inside of the add-ons folder. But you could just copy your modules and then paste them inside of add-ons if that's what you prefer. But don't forget to go into git ignore and then remove the add-ons, so later when you push your code into your client's live repo, it includes the add-ons folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the add-ons empty in this case, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run make then dev. Oh my bad, I'm inside the add-ons folder. So I'm going to do, let me change it back to the company A now. Let me say make. Now it's going to build all the containers. So if we go to localhost 8069, bam, we have our environment ready. So you can either restore your database or create the database, and then you can test out your add-ons inside your development environment. To find your master password, what you're going to need to do is you're going to go to the config file, and then you're going to go to odoo.dev.conf file, and when we ran make setup, it automatically created a few things for us, and it included a strong admin password. So you could just copy an admin password and come back to the master password, paste it here, let's say test, and then email, password, demo data, create a database. Of course, you don't want to make your email admin, but for the sake of this demo, we're going to simplify it, and then I'm going to admin. You got everything ready. And then what you're going to do is you're going to install your client's main applications, create chart of account or upload their chart of accounts, prepare everything here, test out everything. And then once you're ready, now we're going to migrate everything into the production. So as I've explained before, I create one repo for each of my clients' live environments. So in our case, I've created company A repo. And then what we're going to do is we're going to upload our local environment into the live environment. So what am I going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my IDE. In my case, I'm using Cursor and I'm too lazy to do the whole git push process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say push into, and then I'm going to paste a link and release submit. If you have Windsurf or you have Codex or you have GitHub Copilot, you could follow the same process. They run. Always make sure to read these instructions. So it's in the original, it's in the origin, and pushing the code into the repo. Now, if we go to the repo and refresh it, we finally have the code ready in here. Now, you're going to notice few things, right? We don't have the .env, right? Because this is sensitive data. You don't want to upload these kind of data into the repo. If we go to the conf file, you also don't have the two config file that we had in our local. This was done by purpose. And of course, if you've pasted your add-ons in here, and as I've explained it before, you removed the add-ons from the git ignore, you're going to find your add-ons here. Now, so to recap everything, the first step that we did was to clone the setup from the Odoo Docker production repo, and then we cloned it into our laptop. And then what we just did is we uploaded the code into the client live repo. And then the next step is we're going to go to the server and then clone the repo that we've just uploaded. And then finally, in my case, I have the add-ons in a separate repo. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to clone the add-ons. And then next time, if I make some changes to my add-ons and I push it to my code, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull it. Now guys, for the sake of this tutorial, I wanted to buy an actual live VPS to show you, but it's too damn late and I'm so sleepy, so I couldn't bother. So what I did is I've created another simple folder that's called company live. It's an empty folder, and then inside of the folder, what we're going to do is we're going to open a terminal, just say live, and then what we're going to do is we're going to git clone the live environment that we just created. We're going to go here, copy. And this is exactly the steps that you're going to follow when you are inside your server. And of course, assuming that you know a little bit about Linux. I'm going to paste it here. Now, one problem that I've talked before that you can see here is it created a folder inside of the folder that I just created. So what I'm going to do is let me just delete the whole thing, then down, and then I'm going to add a dot at the end of it. So bam, now I have everything ready in here. And same as we did locally, we're going to run make setup, and then it will set up everything for me. So we have the .m file with a strong password, and then we have the .conf file. After the conf file with also 32 hex password, which is also a strong password. One other thing that I wanted to explain is worker. This has to do with your performance, so you don't want your system to slow down whenever there are too many concurrent users. So for this setup, I've set it up for 10 to 30 concurrent users. So 4 workers is more than enough. And in here, each worker is basically a computer on its own. Hopefully, I'm going to make another video explaining what worker is. And each worker, I've gave it 1.2 GB. You're going to have a much better performance. Now, if you have an SSL, what you could do is you could go and set up your SSL inside Apache folder, go to the vhosts, and then inside you're going to find odoo.conf file, and then you could just reference your cert files in there. You can upload your certs file in here. Here's a bit of a readme file on how to generate the cert files. Now I'm going to skip this one because if you use Cloudflare or you use Namecheap Supersonic CDN, you don't even have to do all of that. What we're going to do is we're going to run make prod. Now this will finally run the Apache, and then we'll also finally run the other containers that we just seen. Now my environment should be available in localhost port 80. So if I go to localhost, remove this, and then bam, you can see the production environment came to life. There's one problem though. The database manager has been disabled. This is because if you go to the odoo conf, it's because list db is false. So what you want to do is you want to go and say make prod down, and then you could say make dev, then it will run the environment in development mode. And then what you could do is you could come back here, and then you could just go to your IP address in your case. You could just access it by A069, and then you can upload your database or create a database in here. And then after you're done setting up the database, you could come back, you could stop this, and then you could finally run the make production, and bam, and then you're gonna find your created database here. This has been so tiring to make, but I really hope you have an idea on how to deploy Docker Odoo into the production. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.